reach our shores faster, and China will fill the void, as developing countries will now only be able to rely on cut more deals with Beijing to give them control of ports, critical mineral deposits, and other things. U.S. power will shrink, U.S. jobs will be lost. But Trump isn't satisfied just to close programs and fire the staff. He wants the whole agency eliminated. Yes, it's illegal, but it's a gift to China. But why? Why hand victory to terrorists in China and Russia? Why kill babies intentionally? Who benefits when Trump is so soft on our enemies? Maybe, just maybe, billionaires like Elon Musk, who make their money in China, are the beneficiaries. Maybe someone buying all that secret Trump meme coin is benefiting. It all feels so corrupt because it is. Senator Jeff Merkley. A president is not a king. Trump cannot
so close to recovering the sentinel artifact.
It's a gift to
Somewhere
our
in that excavation
Trump's
site.
been purging and intimidating
Remember,
all the U.S.
the
employees.
artifact is our
How
only hope
unsolved
of bringing
it
Nexus
was
back from the
created by
dark
JFK
ether.
and established in law.
I've got a magic amulet and a shitload of bullets.
Spread hope.
Possibly
It's
go
illegal
wrong.
to do it. Senator Chris Coons regards USAID and undercutting America's role in international assistance. It makes America less safe. It debilitates American leadership and
That's right,
the
lads.
world
Put your backs
China's
into it.
influence. It would be a
Hardcore
massive
allies beyond
mistake.
these so-called
Also, just the way Donald Trump went about it. Last week, he just fired everybody from USA and one of their supervisors says, I'm not firing them. It's a firing supervisor. The whole thing is chaotic,
Transmission
crazy,
emanated from the obscure
so,
Antillium,
as all these senators say, China is killing
channeling an echo from
and
the
China
past.
is providing the aid.
Keeps doing that.
Well, there
Better
is
play
South
something
American countries.
Yes, I still got it.
Strong reliance of the European nations and African nations. As America isolates itself, what's America doing? Imposing tariffs on Mexico and Canada, Europe, Taiwan, our allies. Literally, if you wrote a playbook for how to destroy American influence abroad and lose friends, Trump would be carrying out the playbook. I mean, it would literally be the playbook that
That place has been shunned by locals for years.
destroy the United
Even the
States of
Syndicate
America
avoids it.
without even
Some say it rains blood there.
Everything
Here's
about
me
Trump
without my
is
umbrella.
Scripted in that way, whether it is or isn't. That's kind of what he would do. Everything he's doing here. So now you've got people who, for instance, the Secretary of Defense, Fox News host Pete Hegseth, he goes on the news and he talks about invading Mexico. That's the crazy stuff we're dealing with. Supposedly, alliances to check you, not just Americans invaded by labeling cartels terrorist organizations and threatening terrorism, especially if you don't think they'll retaliate in your ways. None of this is thought out as theocracy meets fascism. For the rest of the world,
Nothing good is ever
70
down.
plus 74, 75, 76 million Americans, probably more, despise this. We don't support this. We stand with you. We don't want this. Who knows, one day they may rip this microphone from my very hands, but until
This better
US
not be like
President Donald Trump
Angelina's
has
Matryoshka
followed
doll.
through
Give
on
me a
his
bunch of
tariff
smaller
threats.
boxes.
He has signed an order to levy 25% tariffs
Oh,
on
look at
imports
that.
from Canada and Mexico.
Someone send
He
down
also
your
set
rough
tariffs
edges.
of 10% on Chinese goods. The measures are coming to force on Tuesday. The announcement has provoked immediate reactions from the countries concerned.
The race to unduplicate international trading partnerships is on. Even though the threat has been moving over major U.S. trading partners, the president didn't talk on tariffs. There were some reactions across the globe to the newly announced tariffs. Canada and Mexico were both quick to retaliate.
Like the tariffs are responsible, far-reaching, and include everyday items such as American beer, wine, bourbon, fruits and fruit
Don't
juices,
tease me,
and
Fox.
orange juice,
Just cough it up.
along with vegetables, perfume, clothing, and shoes. It'll include
I
major
can get
consumer
creative.
products like
By
household
creative, I mean
appliances,
destructive.
furniture, and sports equipment.
materials like lumber and plastics. Along
Looks
with
like
such
someone wants to throw these stinking corpses back to
Mexico's
hell.
president took to X to voice her country's concerns. She said that Mexico was not for confrontation, but added that her country was forced to impose its own tariffs
Skittering out just that stuff.
protests. Both Canada and Mexico will limit the U.S. numbers and implement in their turn a 25% tariff rate on U.S. goods. China too reacted to the announced tax hike of 10% that will be added on top of existing Chinese duties. In a statement, China's Commerce Ministry slammed Washington's quote, erroneous practices, saying Beijing was strongly dissatisfied with them. Beijing said it would file a lawsuit at the World Trade Organization, arguing that the United States seriously violates WTO rules. Canada's premier added that his country is also considering non-tariff measures, including limiting the export of critical minerals and energy. He appealed to Canadians to prefer domestic goods to help the economy.
There are many ways to do this. Maybe nobody goes to the supermarket and get Canadian-made products. It might be opting for Canadian raw milk with preservatives. So go and throw orange juice altogether.
Other U.S. trade partners around the world, including the EU, are now waiting to see who will be hit next by Trump's
We are now joined with economist and podcast from JhJQJ. These tariffs, can they still be averted or are they adopted?
Well, they can be effective on Tuesday, so there are still almost 48 hours to negotiate. Even though I think that there is no room for negotiation currently, I think we really have to understand and to learn that Donald Trump is not only barking, he's also biting, and he's really delivering all of the election promises. So he will make these tariffs really implemented.
Now, we're talking about Canada and Mexico there, first and foremost, and China, but what are the consequences for Europe?
There is really a great war going on. You listened also to the Trudeau here. So this is now a confrontation of all places. And we all know that the EU is also on Donald Trump's radar screen. We know this from the election campaign. The only difference right now is that there is still more investigation going on, which then will be concluded before April 1st. But I think Europe needs to be prepared that on April 1st, Donald Trump will also impose tariffs on Europe.
Are other countries or other regions of the world that need to prepare to find themselves on Trump's tariff target list?
I think almost every country needs to be prepared currently. And that's also the interesting thing that countries are better prepared than 8 years ago. And listen to Mexico, listen to China and Canada. This is a completely different situation than 8 years ago. 8 years ago, we hardly had any imminent reaction by the we tried to use diplomacy to go into talks with Donald Trump. This time around, we see that all these countries are pushing back and are also going for.
Now, it's a trade war. Does a proper trade war looks different? And what would it look like?
It can always be worse, of course, but this is really the start of a proper trade war. If one country unilaterally starts to impose tariffs, the others then are reacting with also unilateral tariffs from their side. This is a tariff war. This is a trade war. And of course, especially if this is really about the largest economies in the world, US, China, Canada, also the EU coming there. This is the fully fledged trade war of course, and still further escalate.
And briefly, please, in which way will that damage the world economy?
Trade war essentially means that in the end it's the consumer paying the price for it in higher prices, and it's going to be all economies suffering. So a trade war doesn't know any winners. The trade war only knows losers.
Lars JhJQJ there, chief economist for the IMF.
After the turn the election again, both negotiating threat and tool fix along to identify problems. His policy of economic nationalism is
Speed kills? You bet your ass it does.
That's like hard. But the world has changed to adequate in the US. Cheap food making quick food supply chain with the tariffs actually forcing employee businesses to supply chain. This was even so.
Dirty flying sack of shit.
Should be played up. Benefit for one. First as always, out
Thanks for coming to Bodies by Weaving. Come again.
Emails clear and effective communication. There's a link in the description so you can check it out yourself. Clicking that link helps support the channel, so sign up and upgrade to Drama Pro level up your food. Protectionism or
Now we wait for the show.
Economy of government. This is a process of industrialization. Has used tariffs and developed their industrial plans. But there are few countries whose development story is so fundamentally linked to the use of tariffs. America,
Gather to peace.
See that? A face only bullet can love.
Textiles, chemicals, US industry is behind the curve with less infrastructure, capital, and skilled labor. It couldn't compete with the market with so rate price set up instead prosperous domestic unconditional tariffs act average tariff rate of target eventually and it worked. US industry roughly fast forward to the end of the century. The war with both secured and free to begin competing for free trade. Technological advances in communication and transport made trade much more efficient, and countries began to specialise and benefit from the principles of comparative advantage and maximum advantage. It also didn't hurt every single competitor at the time before the problem. Free trade was certified as the dominant for the World Trade Organization opened in 1994.
1995 organised a decades-long transit war of tariffs. And with this, supply chains continue to develop their complexity to the point where it becomes common for an end-of-chain product to have parts from 10 or more different manufacturers, all from different places in the world. All this time, free trade dominated trade policy across the world, but this began to be seriously questioned when the largest advocate of free trade imposed landmark tariffs on its largest trade partner in 2018. And because of this, we actually have pretty strong recent evidence of what the impact of tariffs will be. So, what can we learn from this experience? Well, to do that, we have to look at trade within our durable consumer appliance, the washing machine. A research paper by provide a fairly comprehensive account of the impact that the 2018 tariff had on washing machines. It found that the businesses who were importing washing machines passed the cost of the tariff on consumers through price rises, which also created space for domestic producers to follow suit and increase their prices, despite not even paying the tariff. It gets worse, because the price of dryers also saw significant price increases, a product which was not directly subject to a tariff, but became collateral damage since the two goods are often sold together. Shockingly, when taking into account the price increase of domestic washing machines as well as dryers, the tariff elasticity of consumer prices was 12-1. In layman's terms, this means that the additional price burden faced by consumers was larger than the tariff itself, at least in the year or two that followed. The complete pass-through of 2018 tariffs on consumers was also evident in reports from the American Economic Association and the Quarterly Journal of Economics. In effect, this meant that tariffs were just a sneakier, more convoluted way to tax consumers without having to actually call them a tax. In total, the 2018 to 2019 tariffs imposed around $80 billion worth of indirect taxes on Americans, which amounted to one of the largest tax increases in decades. Now, this part was already pretty well known, but tariffs could still be worth it if the additional employment created by protecting domestic industries outweigh the price increases for consumers. In the case of a washing machine specifically, the additional cost of the tariff for consumers amounted to $1.5 billion annually, whilst it only brought in an additional $82 million worth of government revenue annually. 1,800 new jobs were created in the US, meaning each job came at a cost to consumers of a whopping $815,000 a year. This is clearly an inefficient way to create jobs. It would be way more efficient to simply fund 1,800 new jobs by introducing a value-added tax of a much smaller amount. The evidence also suggests that tariffs can damage industry just as well as can protect it, because it's not just consumers who buy imported goods, it's businesses too. The washing machine is an end product, so it's not the best example of a business input, but you know what is? Steel. A 25% tariff was whacked on steel imports in 2018, and suddenly the plates, sheets, strips, beams, bars, rods, pipes, billets, blooms, and slabs that countless American industries needed as an input material became more expensive. This reduced, and in some cases, eliminated profit margins in key domestic industries like automotives, construction, and machinery, triggering layoffs. So despite the tariff increasing employment in the domestic steel and iron industry, the tariffs caused a net reduction in manufacturing employment, meaning for each new hire in US steel, there were multiple layoffs in other industries. The net negative effect shows that there's just way more industries in the US which use steel as an input of production than industries where steel is the output of production. So in this particular case, tariffs didn't protect for industrial decline, it accelerated it, at least in the immediate years that followed. The decline in industry also reflects the damaging consequences of retaliatory tariffs imposed by other countries, the inevitable counter-strike in any trade war. In light of the 2018 tariffs, China imposed a series of their own on the USA, largely targeting agricultural food products. This made American agricultural exports more expensive for Chinese companies, reducing the demand for these products, resulting in less revenue to provide income in the agricultural sector. The US government prevented mass layoffs by directly paying farmers and purchasing agricultural products, but this came at a hefty price. $61 billion was spent on supporting US farmers who were impacted by Chinese tariffs from 2018 to 2020, which almost entirely cancelled out the additional $66 billion the US government collected on tariffs imposed on China. So, tariffs certainly generate additional revenue, but through retaliation, they create the need for more fiscal spending elsewhere, so it's like an expensive game of whack-a-mole. And as a result, tariffs are unlikely to create the dramatic fiscal surplus the US needs to reach the wholly promised land of lower income taxes. Now, it's important to note that these studies were only done a year or two after tariffs came into effect, which means we can only use them reliably to understand the short run, which is clearly bad for consumers and a lot of industries. But in the long run, factors of production are by definition more flexible, so it's entirely possible that tariffs could bring more benefits than costs, as factors of production are reallocated towards domestic production, generating investment, employment, and growth. Now, fortunately, there are older tariffs where the effects have marinated for decades. A 25% tariff was placed on light trucks imported to the US in 1964. Since then, pickup trucks and SUVs have become the highest
For silver, there is a number that is far more important than price, and the clock is ticking on that number as we speak. But there's another number that I want to make you aware of as well that could bring things into alignment. I'll explain what that is as we explore. Silver. They can't print it. They can only mine so much of it per year. And this is why that the natural order of things comes into play with hard assets like silver and gold. I think that's one of the most amazing things and the best arguments that we can make for holding this metal. It has been money for thousands of years, a store of value for thousands of years. And this is in spite of price fluctuations. This is why this series exists. What am I talking about? We're talking about the dollar to silver ratio. That's right. We have three different numbers we're looking at here. But the one that is most urgent is the dollar to silver ratio right now. And we're going to get in and I'm going to explain exactly what this number means, because this is not a price, it's a ratio. If we look at it over the course of 5 years and 10 years, you can see that these numbers are getting close to each other. In fact, from 10 years ago, it's pretty consistent with what it is right now. Obviously, over the past 5 years, that spans the pandemic, which is when we saw it explode to over $5,000 per ounce in terms of the dollar to silver ratio. And I have a whole playlist of these videos, which is worth looking back and seeing what it was like during those times, during the dollar to silver ratio and how much money they were printing, because that's really what it boils down to. We're going to look at this from a different level here. We're going to go back and check it out and see exactly what this means. When we highlight these numbers, we get an explanation as to what they mean, what they are. And over here at the day clock, we can see that the dollar to silver ratio is the year-over-year increase in the U.S. into money supply divided by the yearly world production of silver in ounces. And this is sourced from the Federal Reserve and USGS. I think they've done their homework on this, and it gives you some insight as to what's going on here. In other words, there are that many dollar bills, 1,149 dollar bills that are printed, or more likely digitized, for every single ounce of silver mined per year. That tells you something. Now, for a while, after inflation heated up and the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, well, you saw that number go back to zero because, for all effective purposes, they stopped printing. The monetary system had contracted. The monetary supply had contracted here. We can see that laid out from this chart here from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. And this gives us some insight as to what's going on with the money supply since 2020. You can see how it spiked up dramatically in 2020, and then it had contracted a bit. And now we find ourselves here at this point in time, in 2025, where it has started to increase from about October of 2023, when essentially they kind of had stopped raising interest rates, paused, and then they lowered them to kind of get the economy going again, because employment was kind of going back up again. And there was issues with the economy. The Federal Reserve tries to interject now, sending more money into the system. That money in the system is not from what the Federal Reserve is doing to try to stimulate the economy, but it is also what the government is doing by legislative efforts to increase the money supply. The Federal Reserve really has no choice but to spend the economy accumulate in order to meet the needs.
Look at me. Now that I give a shit about their pain.
And a lot of that money is still being spent now, even though there are some efforts by the current administration to try to scale some of that back. A freeze, or a pause, if you will, of spending until we can work things out. Some of the legislation, though, calls for more spending. So what does this mean? I guess they have to, unless they can repeal those bills, that's going to continue happening. And the data that we have here just goes till December of 2024. As you can see, it is still expanding. So that is where we're at. So it has not been adjusted yet for the new administration. Likely that may come, soon. But this is where it stands right now. And this is quite something to see that amount of money being spent. And it's just upticking here, the dollar supply that has been added. So this is why this number is actually increasing from where it was before. But there's a hope that they can dodge the bullet with the debt and maybe bring it down a little bit to the tune of, a couple of $1 trillion if possible, if Doge has its way. Here it is right now. The national debt is indeed at $36.4 trillion. And it's ticking away and climbing up dramatically here. But if we go back out a little bit here, we can see the Doge clock. This is a new number here we're looking at. And this is interesting. It almost seems somewhat arbitrary, this amount of number here. It is a 45, it's at $45 million there, or $45 billion, I guess, rather. And that is the Department of Government Efficiency's Advisory Commission Real-Time Savings Objective for reducing government waste, fraud, and abuse in federal government agencies. Wish them all the best because there's a heck of a lot of it. There is a running tally in the agency about 40 hours and
Max Armor.
looked it up. That is what they track. To do that would still leave $1 trillion added to the debt over the course of time. So at least it's slowing down the pace dramatically of $1 trillion in 100 days. Little cuts. But still, there's a lot of money out there to be spent.
God damn, don't expect me to
bury
bury you, too.
This debt, this Doge clock,
Fortunately for you,
is real-time savings.
I am a patient man.
In other words, that's where they want to go. It does not mean that they're saving this much money right now. I think it's going to take a while. So people have false hopes to think that this thing is having an impact, but you can see here, this number is going up, but so is this number. That's right, the U.S. national debt. The federal budget deficit here, $2 trillion, tear that down, which means spending will still go up. There's massive reductions needed all across the board. Way too big. The administrative state is one time moved out, and a lot of it probably will require legislation to happen. Notwithstanding, it is kind of a dodge, if you will, with Doge to try to bring these numbers down to reasonable levels. And hopefully economic activity can bear out the difference so that with, even with some tax cuts, we may see the federal revenue actually increase because of that.